Captain Sonar is a game that came out a couple of years ago, I believe, but I haven't played it, so I will not be able to compare it with Sonar, which is the new edition, or I should say the new version of the game that came out at Gen Con 2017. But since I had heard the good things about the original Captain Sonar, I wanted to give this one a try, and try it I did. Sonar is a game of submarine warfare for 2 to 4 players. From what I read online from people that are comparing the two versions of the game, Sonar is pretty much the same game with fewer roles, and in fact it plays with 2 to 4 players, and it has only 2 roles, the captain and the radio operator. In this game, 2 players or 2 teams will be competing, moving around the map, and there are several possible maps with different configurations for added replay value. They're moving around the map secretly. Each player plots their movement secretly on the side of the screen, and they're trying to figure out where the opponent is to torpedo them. I'm not always a big fan of hidden movement games, so I was curious about this one, but also, I don't know, not unbound enthusiasm. I wanted to try it and form an opinion for myself. Let's take a closer look at Sonar, and then we'll talk about the game in general. The game comes with this nice, long and tall screen, very beautiful, creates the right atmosphere, and also very functional. This is a game of hidden movement and hidden information, so you should not be able to see what the opponent is doing on their board, or I should say boards. Each side of the contest has 2 roles, a radio operator and a captain, and each role has a specific display. A single player can easily perform both roles, which is why the game can be played by 2 players only, 1 per side, or by simply assigning these functions to different players. You can have up to 3 or 4 players playing in teams of 2. Now, as I said, the captain and the radio operator. The captain uses this display here, and this display is used to mark the position and movements of the captain's submarine. So this thing will mark their position movement on this display here. This display is divided in 4 areas, 4 sectors. I like to think of those as quadrants because I am a little bit of a Star Trek buff. So you have 4 quadrants. At the beginning of the game, you simply mark your position anywhere there. During the game, you will move, and when you move, you simply use this dry erase marker to mark your new position. Now we are here. And then next time I move, maybe I move here, and maybe I move here. When you move, you cannot enter an area where you already were, and you cannot cross a line that you already drew. So pretty much from here, I can only go here or here, not here. So definitely the places where you have been and the line that you're drawing limit you. I don't know that thematically makes much sense, but as you will see, it makes a lot of sense gameplay-wise. Meanwhile, while the captain is marking the position of his or her sub on the display, the radio operator is jotting down notes and trying to figure out what the opponent is doing. When the radio operator gets information about the direction of the opponent, say we just learned that the opponent goes north, then the radio operator draws a line like that going north, and later maybe the radio operator learns that the opponent is going east, and then east again, and then north, and then west. Simply the radio operator keeps track of that. But the radio operator, as you can see, has this sheet of transparent plastic that goes on top of the radio operator display. This is important because the radio operator at the beginning doesn't really matter where the radio operator is drawing. It's a good idea to put it more or less in the middle of the plastic display, but it doesn't really matter where in relation to the map yet, simply because then the radio operator will move this plastic sheet around, the transparent plastic sheet around, trying to see where it might fit, because as the game progresses, it may be that the places that the opponent travel will not fit anywhere on the map, because as you can imagine, you cannot enter or go through areas that are mapped as obstacles, represented as obstacles or terrain. And so, for example, here, this would still fit. Look at that, would fit there, would fit here, but would not fit in other positions. For example, it would not fit here. So we know that if the opponent moved this way, the opponent cannot be there, because the opponent would have broken the rule by moving there. Oh, and there too. So as the line gets longer, you get more information on what the opponent is doing, where the opponent is. But of course, that means that when you are moving here on the captain display, you're given increasingly more information on what you're doing and where you might be. Now, during a turn, the captain can take one of several actions. A standard action which is taken very often is to move. When you move as the captain, you simply mark a new segment on the map indicating where you moved and where you just arrived. When you move, also you need to announce the direction in which you moved. Again, you are not telling the opponent where on the map, but as you're telling them more and more about the direction, the connections that you are touching. Again, the line takes shape, and that allows the opponent to exclude possibilities. So you move, you tell the opponent the direction in which you moved, and you also accumulate a point of energy. There are other actions that you can perform which require energy. And suppose that then I move again next turn and I accumulate another energy. Now I could perform another action. I could perform the Sonar action. Here, the display of the captain also works as a player aid of the things that the captain can do by spending energy. By spending 2 points of energy, the captain can use the Sonar as their action for the turn. When you activate the Sonar, the opponent has to tell you either the column or the line in which they are now. So for example, the opponent may say, okay, we are somewhere in column H, or we are somewhere in line 8, or in line 4, or in column D. And of course, when you're giving the information, you're also trying to be as ambiguous as possible, trying to figure out what, well, looking at the information that the opponent has on you, you're trying to tell them a line in which may be a line or a column in which you may be in 2 positions instead of just 1. Another action that you can take is to go silent. It takes 3 points of energy to go silent. And that simply means that you get to move without telling the opponent where you moved. And here the opponent then will just... one way of doing it is to mark as a dotted line possible ways where the opponent may have moved. For example, if the opponent was here and the opponent went silent, the opponent could not go back here because it's illegal. The opponent could only have and could not backtrack, so the opponent could only have gone north or east. And from there, then next turn, the opponent tells me I'm going north, and then I kind of like think, okay, it's probably one of these. And then the opponent tells me, and I'm going north again. Then it cannot be this one, it'll be this one. So that is how you run silent and how you try to figure out where the opponent is after the opponent runs silent. So you're running around trying to conceal your position for as long as possible, and you're trying to figure out the position of the opponent. When you think you have it, when you think you know exactly where the opponent is, and your energy is full, and you are in the same quadrant where the opponent is, or you think the opponent is, then you can fire. You can use a torpedo action. Again, it costs 4 energy. You can only indicate a point in your quadrant, and you say, for example, okay, I think you are in I3. That's where I'm shooting my torpedo. The opponent will tell you if that is correct or not. If that it is correct, that is a hit against the opponent, the damage that the opponent takes and marks on their player aid. And the first player or team to score 2 hits against the opponent is the winner of the game. And this is really pretty much most of what the game is. There's actually one other action, which is surfacing. At some point, maybe your line has become so ridiculous that the opponent will really and easily figure out where you are. At that point, you need to erase that and simply take the action of surfacing, which means you erase all of it. You erase all the previous lines. You only keep that position. This could also be a good idea. But of course, the opponent knows. But to do so, you take that action, you erase everything, but you also have to tell the opponent your exact position. So this could be a good action to take after you took a hit, because you know that the opponent is down to 0 energy at that point, cannot fire again. The opponent knows where you are anyways, and so unless there's something else you want to do, and if your line starts looking a little weird and it's going to block you in future movements, then you may want to surface at that point. But really, this is how you play Sonar. Move around, try to move as sneaky as possible, figure out where the opponent is, torpedo them, and if you manage to torpedo them twice before they do it to you, you're the winner of the game. So as I said, sometimes I do not enjoy hidden movement games for a very simple reason. Somebody messes up, and if that person is me, then I feel particularly guilty. I've wrote on a piece of paper the list of places where I've been, and mentally I was thinking of one thing, and I wrote down something else, and it turns out that I'm in a position, they're in a position, and everybody's both right and wrong at the same time. Again, if that is me, I feel particularly guilty. And some of the times, some of these boards with hidden movement are particularly complicated, and that increases the problem, the risk of mistakes. I did not have this problem with Sonar. Is foolproof, is Marco-proof, is hidden movement, mistake-prone player proof. So, yay, everything is very straightforward. Yeah, you may make a mistake, but ultimately you have recorded everything. The line is not so long, so it's pretty much easy to figure out what happened. And most importantly, you know, you can have a game that you don't make many mistakes in it, but it's still dull to play. This one actually is fun. So it's fun, and the straightforward hidden movement system allows me to enjoy gameplay without having to worry about minor mistakes here and there. It's fun. It's really fun and really exciting. I did not expect it to be this fun. I thought, well, maybe it's going to be good. But it's really, really exciting. Much more tense than I would have ever imagined. There's, of course, the challenge of figuring out where the opponent is, but at the same time, the challenge of hiding your movement, so having to consider how much information you're giving to the opponent and when. But it's not just that would be interesting enough, but it's not just that. There's also an interesting element that feels wargameish in concept, which is the sense of opportunity. Opportunities that come and go, of being able to identify the right moment to perform the right action. In many hidden movement games, once I know where you are, I know where you are, and I'm good. Here, I have to time things based on where I am, on where you are, on the level of energy that I have, and on the level of energy that I think you have. It's very important indeed that you try to keep track of the level of energy that your opponent has based on the actions that they take. That is public information, so you're not even cheating. They tell you, take this action, so you know, okay, they just spent 2 energy. Because you may know where the opponent is, and at that time you do not have a torpedo ready, and by the time you have torpedo ready, they went silent. You know that they are on your tail, you know that they know where you are, and you're not sure where they are, or you're not ready to fire. You don't want to get caught. Then you can do defensive maneuvers. Now I'm making movements that allow me to cross from one quadrant to the other. I'm moving the central area of the board where the quadrants meet, so that it's easy for me to move around. I move next to an edge of a quadrant and I zigzag a little bit. Well, it's orthogonal zigzag type of thing. So there is that almost tactical element that I did not expect in a game about hidden movement that seemed like a magnified version of Battleship. It seems to be just about deduction. It is about deduction. It is about bluffing, or in any case misleading the opponent, or in any case creating many alternative interpretations, trying to take a course that could fit in many places on the board. But then there's also that element that felt very wargamey. You may have a game where one side is running from the other and the other side is hunting them for a while until that side manages to disappear from the map. And at that point, the side that was hunting enters a quadrant and they get torpedoed at the last moment. When players start getting a good sense of where the opponent might be, you start this, again, the tactical movement. It's a game of tactical movement and position, which surprised me how wargamey it felt. So really fun. Again, I was afraid it's going to be a simple game of deduction, maybe too dry, but the tension, the fun that we were having, the tension we were experiencing, the fun we were having, the mental challenges that we were having. There are nice puzzles that you're trying to prepare for the opponent and to solve, but again, at the same time, the game doesn't feel dry. Everything feels very cohesive and very immersive. No pun intended, maybe. One thing, maybe, the two roles, they both have interesting things to do, but there is no denying that the captain is the captain, and that maybe they wanted to reproduce military hierarchy that way. But the captain has more things to do, has more decisions to make. Now, in normal team games, that would not be a problem. You discuss with the teammates, what should we do? Should we do this? Should we do that? But of course, if you start having these long conversations and detailed conversations in front of the opponents in team, that is not good, because the opponent's gonna get a lot of information. If you look like you really are making some silly moves, but you're telling, but look, we need to charge the torpedo. Maybe you're bluffing. But most likely you're giving information to the opponent. Again, that wouldn't happen, but you're telling the opponent that most likely are in the same quadrant. So the type of discussion that in games with unequal roles may help creating some balance is not likely to happen here. I mean, I found myself trying to hint at things, to use body language and telepathy to try to communicate with the other player. But truly, the two roles are not equal, and the captain has more things to do. And the radio operator still has the very important puzzle of, figuring out where things can be, but that is a little more mechanical. When the line starts taking a certain shape, well, it's not a matter of being too creative. There are only several configurations that the radio operator has to check. Advantages, there is an advantage, in teams where you have the alpha player problem, that is one player telling everybody else what to do, then plays the alpha player in the radio operator role, and it balances that element. In other teams, it may be a little less exciting, but there is another solution for this though, which is then you play another game in which you switch roles. That is to say, I wouldn't say it's a flaw, I would say it's an element that may result in an underwhelming experience for some players that play the radio operator, but there are ways of addressing that, and if you have alpha players in your group, it may even be an advantage. Other than that, and it's a very, 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 very minor thing, the game is good. The game is very good. I had a great time playing it. I can't wait until I played more. There are many maps with different levels of difficulty, different challenges, different ways in which we can trick the opponent. The interaction within the group is silent, but is important. Again, if nothing else, the captain is looking at what the radio operator has on their map and trying to figure things out. So definitely this interaction there, although again, it's more implicit than anything. But there is this very strong sense of tension constantly coming from the other side, not knowing where the other side is, trying to get a sense of what they know about you, and you may or may not be correct about that. And again, after the period of mutual studying, you may have a sequence of events which is just a bona fide submarine duel, which is really exciting. And I did not expect to find this in a game that I believe to be just about deduction and hidden movement. Sonar, fun, manageable. I mean, I've heard from people that played Captain Sonar that the other game is bigger, takes longer to play, and takes more players. So if you played the previous Captain Sonar, this is a more manageable version. For somebody who had not played the full game, this I found to be an absolutely exciting and very rewarding introduction to the system, to the idea. I'm very pleased that they tried Sonar. At some point I definitely want to try Captain Sonar, because hey, I had a good time playing this one, and I can only imagine the other one will be a lot of fun too. On the other hand, if I have a small game night in which maybe only one or two friends are over, then Sonar can be a good option.